Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are back, and things might look a little bit different in today's video. We're finishing up our season previews, and of course, we have a new setup. I bought a new computer. It's a little bit of a different setup, so if you have any questions about the setup, let me know down below. How's the audio? How's the video? Let me know all of that down below, because I'm kind of interested to see what you guys think. So with that out of the way, let's get into our first video with the new setup, and let's discuss the Utah Hockey Club. And I think what's interesting about Utah is obviously the fact that this is a relocation team. This is the newest franchise kind of identity change in the NHL. So we've seen Vegas, Seattle, and now the new toy on the block is Utah. So the Utah Hockey Club, obviously coming over from Arizona, they have a lot of good prospects, draft picks, and things like that. But they also made a couple of moves this summer that are going to make this team probably pretty competitive this season. They made a lot of interesting moves. We're going to go over that here in today's video. So let's take a look at the forward group for Utah. So the forwards are pretty solid for this club going into this season. And you've got Clayton Keller, Barrett Hayton, and Nick Schmaltz. That's your top line. And I think looking at your forward group, there's obviously a void there down the middle, depending on how things go with Barrett Hayton. He had a really good season last year, but can he continue that? Because, it took him a little while to develop. There was some potential, the idea that he might have been a bust. It's pretty much, as short as less than 2 years ago. That was what we were talking about with Barrett Hayton. And now he's coming to the NHL, and now he is centering this team as the number one center. Now, there's a lot of questions about whether Logan Cooley comes in and potentially becomes that number one center. But as of right now, it's Barrett Hayton, Logan Cooley, and then moving down into the bottom six, you've got Nick Bjugstad and Jack McBain as your center core in Utah this season. So honestly, I think that's a pretty solid group, but there's definitely there's a lack of depth there and experience. Really, the only experience that's truly on this team more than a year or two is Nick Bjugstad. And as good of a center as he is, he's properly placed there on the third line. The other guys, it's a lot of growth and development coming from the rest of that center core. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do this season. There's going to be a lot of growing pains up there in Utah, especially at the center group. Now looking at the rest of the lineup, so you've got Schmaltz and Keller on the top line. Dylan Guenther, who just got his big contract there with Utah, very exciting. Lawson Crouse, Matthias Michelli, Josh Doan, Kevin Stenlund, and Alex Kerfoot. A lot of these guys have a lot of promise behind them. Matthias Michelli, kind of like Barrett Hayton, came onto the scene last season and really commanded himself as a player to watch. Really interesting to see if he can keep up that scoring pace or maybe even surpass that this season. Same thing for Dylan Guenther. Josh Doan coming into the NHL. Obviously, the name recognition there. There's going to be a lot of attention drawn toward him. And I think what's interesting with some of these other guys, you've got like Crouse, Stenlund, Kerfoot, a little bit of experience there, but kind of like the center group, there's a lack of true experience more than a season or two in this forward group. And as much as there's a lot of skill and talent and probably speed, there is questions about over a full 82-game schedule, how are these young cats going to do? So I'm excited to see Utah. There's a lot of new faces here in Utah, and I'm interested to see just what they can do up front, because I have a lot more questions up front than I do on the back end. And when we get to the defense, I'm going to be a little bit more positive. So let's get to that defense, because I think that defense is a real strength of this hockey team this year going in. And obviously the names that everyone's talking about, the new additions like Mikhail Sergachev and John Marino, and rightfully so, those are guys that are coming in, and they're going to have lofty expectations coming into Utah. Obviously, Sergachev, his experience with Tampa Bay, one of the best defensemen in the NHL, now goes to Utah. There's a lot of questions about his injury history and his health over last season, and probably part of the reason Tampa traded him out. But there's obviously a high risk, high reward here with a guy like Sergachev. The reward could be so sweet for them, and if that injury doesn't end up being that big of an issue and a long-term issue for Sergachev, Utah got themselves a really, really good hockey player. Obviously, John Marino, similar story. He's had some injury issues. He's been moving around the NHL a little bit. He was with the Devils. He was with the Penguins. So now hopefully he'll find hopefully a little more stability in Utah. Really solid defenseman. He's going to jump into that, that first or second pair on the blue line. And like I said, you just to look at that top four, you've got Sergachev playing alongside Sean Durzi. And then the second pair, you've got Juuso Valimaki and John Marino. Like I said, pretty good improvements there for the Utah Hockey Club. I would say that is a better group than we've seen over the last couple of years in Arizona. And even though it looks a little different, seeing guys like Jakob Chychrun no longer there, and some of the other defensemen that have moved on, I like this team a lot. And I think the Sergachev addition, really, that is the key point addition that is really giving people faith and credibility in the defense in Utah. Now the third pair, I think a little bit underrated. Michael Kesselring comes back. I think he's a good player there. Is he more of an AHL defenseman? I'd say on a playoff team, probably. But I really like the addition of Ian Cole. And I think everybody's kind of forgotten about the free agent acquisition of Ian Cole because of just how much has happened there on that defense in Utah since they brought in Ian Cole. Obviously he has a lot of winning experience. He's been on some really good hockey clubs, even over the last couple of years. He's played with Pittsburgh, won two Stanley Cups in Pittsburgh. Before that was with the St. Louis Blues. And then since then, on his way to Utah, he's been in Minnesota, Carolina, Tampa Bay. He's been all over the place. But this is a guy that has winning experience. And even Colorado, he was on that team when they were doing quite well. Didn't get a Stanley Cup ring with them, but he was on the rise of the Avalanche. And then even looking at last season, he played on the Vancouver Canucks and was a huge part of the reasons, one of the huge reasons why the Canucks ended up going as far as they did, a lot further than a lot of people expected. So I'm interested to see what Ian Cole does here. He's going to be the anchor for this defense. He's going to be a leader. He's going to allow the younger guys to develop, like Marino and Sergachev, and they're going to do their job. And Sergachev can do his thing, not worry about being a leader right out of the gate. He's going to get comfortable with the lineup. He's going to get comfortable being the top guy now on a hockey team. It's a little different than when he was in Tampa Bay. There's going to be a different narrative around him. The identity is different. There's going to be a lot more attention drawn toward him and his everyday play. So a guy like Ian Cole taking down the leadership role of this team, there's a reason that teams continually bring him in. And he's not a journeyman because he's bad and just teams are trying him out. He's a journeyman because everybody wants him. He's just that type of player. So I'm really interested to see what happens with Ian Cole, and hopefully he has a good season there. So, like I said, looking at the positives, obviously the defense is definitely a positive of this team. I really like that defense there, and like I said, you basically changed up, half your defense with some of the additions they brought in here. One of the negatives, there's a lack of experience up front. And I think that's something that, in the beginning of the season, when everybody's all excited and the adrenaline's pumping, I could see Utah doing fairly well in the beginning of the season. But over a full 82-game schedule, when you have those highs and those lows and those long road trips, that's something where we're going to start to see just how mature this young Utah team is. And I think that, unfortunately, I just don't think they're going to be able to surpass some of the issues that they might be facing this season. So I do have them missing the playoffs this season, but it's going to be a fairly good season for them. Don't think that this is a season you could throw in the trash and it's not worth watching. 84 points is my prediction for the Utah Hockey Club in the 2024-25 season. They're a good hockey team, and I think that as long as that defense can hold things down, stay healthy, obviously, John Marino and Nick Bjugstad are both day today, so we'll see the injury status of those guys going into the season. Connor Ingram and Karel Vizmelka in between the pipes. They had some really good stretches last season, and then they had moments where they weren't so good. So there's just a lot of things that I like about this team, but I'm not confident in my assessment of this group. So I think it's going to be a growing pain season, especially up front. This might be a team that struggles to score goals. And like I said, there's a lot of promise, though, with Michelli and Dylan Guenther and Logan Cooley coming in and Barrett Hayden. There's a lot of guys that can score on this team, but just how frequently and how often over a full season will they be able to do that? That's really my big question. So I'd love to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of the Utah Hockey Club going into this season? Are they a playoff team? Are they not a playoff team? I'd love to know your guys' thoughts. Their first season in Salt Lake City. let's see what they can do. Let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.